Okay. Erev Tov, everybody. Hello, hello. Please turn on your cameras if you can. It would be so wonderful to see all your faces. Hello, hello. It, okay. Um, it looks like Tammy's still trying to join audio, but good, good. Erev Tov, everybody. We were just singing the Zusha version of Misha Nechnes Adar Marvin V'Simcha. Indeed, it is Adar. Purim Katan just happened this past Shabbos, which means that Purim is less than a month away. So as a quick introduction for people to get to know each other, please share your name, where you're Zooming from, and a happy Purim thing you're looking forward to, or a happy Purim memory from the past. So name, where you're Zooming from, and a Purim memory you're looking forward. So I'll begin. Hello, I'm Shalhevet Cahana. I live in New York City in Washington Heights. And last year, Dvir and I did a dress up together where we were just married, Poppins. So he could, because he had popped the question. Okay. So that's me. And Minna, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mina. I'm from San Diego. And for me, when I think about Purim, I think about my daughters, that they are now young adults. But when they were younger, they loved to dress up. But Purim was different because it doesn't matter the dresses that they were wearing during the year. For Purim, I let them color the hair like Little Mermaid, like do something extra, not only the way that they were using the customs all year. So they love Purim.
Ooh, Jeffrey, please introduce yourself. Where are you zooming from, and a Purim memory or thing you're looking forward to?
You're talking to Jeff Katz?
Yes, Jeff Katz.
Oh, hi everyone. Yes, great to join this Zoom class. I am zooming from Boca Raton, Florida, and I unfortunately will be, well, fortunately, I'll be celebrating Purim here. I will miss Stanton Street because there are many great memories of Purim, costume parties, galas, a variety. We really, Stanton Street celebrates Purim very well. And so I will miss that this year, but I wish you all a Ma'avadim B'Simcha.
Tammy, please introduce yourself. Where are you zooming from? In a Purim past or something in the Purim future that you're looking forward to?
What did you say?
Where you're zooming from, and a Purim memory or something you're looking forward to.
To do with, I missed the beginning because I was on a phone call about something. So to do with Purim?
Yes.
Okay, I'm signing in from San Diego, California. Obviously not originally from San Diego. I'm actually Australian, and grew up in Melbourne with a religious family and a religious community. And I would say that probably I had the fondest memories of Purim when we did a Purim spiel at our Beit Knesset every year. And I got to sing and dance in the chorus. We had someone who wrote a different one every single year. She put the words to music from a musical of that had been, and it was, I've never seen anything like it since I've moved here. So that's a memory of mine from Purim.
Margie, can you share
sorry.
with us? No, you're good. You're good. Hello.
I was blowing my nose because I am under the weather and under the covers, and that's why I'm off camera. But I am at the Jersey Shore, and one of my fondest memories was at Stanton, the Purim Gala. That was really just a great party. And wishing everyone a Chag Purim Sameach.
Amen. Amen. This coming year at Stanton, in a few weeks, we have a lot of amazing things planned. I promise. Alana.
Hi, I'm Ilana. I'm also from San Diego. And like Tammy, I think my fondest memories of Purim have to do with spiels. They were amazing. Growing up, every year we had a Purim spiel. And for my daughters, we've done some. And at their school, they do like a spoof on a spiel. And it's very fun. And I really like that.
Rachel. Hello.
Hello, I just made it in. I was power walking from somewhere else in Miami. I'm in Miami. Normally I'm in New York City, but I'm coming to you from the last few days of my escape from winter. And you said it could be something, in the future. So I guess even though I don't know if the Super Bowl would ever overlap with Purim, but I look forward to the day when ham and tashin are like regular Super Bowl snacks.
I love it. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. Oh my goodness. And welcome, Brendan. Hello, hello. Brendan, if you'd like to, oh, and there's another person who's in the waiting room. Hello. Hi, iPhone. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Brendan, if you could please introduce yourself, where you're zooming from, and either a Purim memory of something in the past or something you're looking forward to in your Purim future. Unless Brendan is not available. Okay, maybe not. And so, Karen, hello. Oh no, just
Hi.
kidding. It looks like Brendan is now unable to unmute. I'm sorry. Please go ahead,
Let
Brendan.
me see if I can unmute.
No, you're unmuted. You're good. You're good.
Oh, I am. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Brendan. I see Tammy on the call here. Nice to see your faces. I just actually walked out from my grandson, just turned 1 year old today. So yeah, so we had a great time for his birthday. So Purim memories, many Purim memories, starting from childhood, with dressing up at school, reading the Megillah, shouting about Haman. What else? Just lots of good memories. So that's all. That's all I'll say.
Memories about Purim.
And Karen, please introduce yourself. Where are you zooming from, and a Purim memory or something you're looking forward to?
Okay, so I'm Karen Cahana, and from Montreal. And I think when I reflect back more on Purim as a young family, it was always fun. We usually did a family shtick together, and that was always, coming up with a theme. It was always esoteric and always a lot of fun. And I think actually with Dvir was making mishloach manot every single year. He was my partner, and we would mass them out, and that was a beautiful thing to deliver shlach manos. And yeah, it was Esther Tarek. Okay, got it. Anyway, so hi. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, Purim was always wonderful. It was really communal, and yeah, so yeah.
And on that note, Dvir.
An opportunity for creativity, I think.
Yes. And on that note, Dvir, please.
My turn?
Yes.
When should I start?
Go.
Okay. I'm Debbie Robinson. I'm Shalhevet Cahana's mother. She is the 5th out of 6 children born. I'm sitting in my kitchen in Newton Center, Massachusetts. I have only fond memories of Purim. Several days before, the children and I would sit down at the dining room table assembling more than 100 packages of Mishloach Manot. And then on Purim morning, the children would go out with shopping bags, walking around the block, visiting the first 30 homes that they would see that day. Many of those people didn't even know what Purim was, but by their names, we knew they were Jewish. Then we all got into the minivan and drove around until almost dark when we started the Suda, giving out the packages and feeding ourselves on the booty that we got as gifts from other families.
Growing up, what we would do is we would take sheep plates, like that would be like maybe a cent each, like very simple ones, and we would draw something in the center, and then we would do a staple at the bottom, a staple at the bottom, and a staple at the top, so it would look like a hamantashen.
That's cute.
And we would fill up the center with like simple things, but the goal was to make as many as we could and not make each one like too fancy, but it was that we wanted to be marbesh shalom v're'ut. We wanted to make friendship to as many people as we possibly could, and it was there are experiences we have that resonate with us, that go deep in our hearts, and that was one of them, Ima. And last but not least, Dvir, how about you?
I'm zooming in from down the hall. Yeah, I really love the community component of Purim and the really creative costumes. I remember that each Purim would be like an art project in our household. And one costume that sticks out in particular, my mother had like a beautiful mitachad on, and my sister had my baby sister had like a aluminum tinfoil hat, and my mother was a fortune teller, and my sister was the crystal ball. And it was just such a cute image that sticks in my head of thinking about all the different fun, creative ways of making costumes and having a good time as a community.
That sounds so cool. Well, I buy in our future some Torah learning. Crystal, welcome. It is so good to see you. Ooh, how do I do this? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Amazing. I think it's working. Cool. Slideshow. Awesome. Cool. Here we go. I'm going to show you now two paintings. Both were made by the same painter, named Edwin Long. They were painted in 1878. One of them is called Vashti Refuses the King's Summons, and the second one is called Queen Esther. I am not telling you which one is, and your goal is to figure out which one is which. So here we go. What do you think? So I want you to take in these images for a second, look at them carefully. In case someone might be visually impaired, I'll give it basic image descriptions. The image on the right shows a woman in the center with her hands crossed. Her eyes look bland. A servant is about to drape a piece of cloth over her. To her right is a mirror. Next to her is another servant who has a chest open with various jewels. It looks regal and palatial. This person is like has this type of headband with beads. On the left, we see also a woman in the center. She sits also on a bench. This bench has actually a lion, like a lion hide that she's sitting upon. Her face is completely blanched, such that there's like a very strong like color contrast between her body and the darkness that surrounds her. She also is flanked by servants, and the servants are, two of them are kneeling. One has like their hands cupped in her hands. The other one is actually pointing towards some guards in the background. So let's take a vote. Who thinks the image on the right is Vashti? Okay, who thinks image on the right is Esther?
Yes.
I think so.
I think the one on the right is Esther.
Yeah.
Okay. And who thinks the image on the left is Vashti?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And who thinks the image on the right is Esther? I mean, the left is Esther. Excuse me.
No.
Okay. It happens to be that you are that the vast majority of oh, I guess I thought I removed it. Okay. It happens to be that the image on the right is Esther and the image on the left is Vashti. That happens to be true. Just curious, what were like the tip-offs? Like what led you to be like, oh, that's Esther, like, oh, that's Vashti. How did you know?
The lion.
How so? What does the lion indicate?
It represents major power and Bavel, Persia, and it's the king of the jungle.
Huh.
And so the servants are there also kneeling in front of her. And she's blanched because she's being ready to be killed.
Ooh, okay. What Jeff is bringing up is that Vashti came from authentic royal lineage. Vashti was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar and the daughter of Belshazzar from Babylonian lineage. She represents the last visage of Babel, and she married Ahasuerus, a Persian king, as a way to blend in the former monarchy of Babel into the current monarchy of Persia. And yes, I think it's a correct read that she's blanched because she knows that her life is at risk. Ahasuerus has asked for her to come into his party. He and his cronies have been partying for 6 months and a week in a drinking party. And if I were her, I would feel like it's a lose-lose situation. You're kind of stuck. You go into the party, your life's at risk. You say no to the king, your life is also at risk. Yeah, she's terrified.
I also think that, I mean, she refused. So I think she's actually demonstrating some kind of like protection of her body in this image is what sort of gave it away to me, that it was, I think it was sort of this gesture over herself, like, no, I will not reveal myself in that sort of way. So there's I think in that gesture, but wasn't easy to tell.
I will not appear naked before the king.
Well, so the Ahasuerus's request to her, of her through his servants, was Lahavi et Vashti Hamalka, to bring Queen Vashti bifnei Hamelech, before the king, bichatar malchut, with the royal crown, leharot ha'amim v'hasarim et yofiach, to show off to the other nations her beauty, kitovat mer'ehi, because she was beautiful to look at. So the Midrash wonders, I mean, it's a kind of yucky objectification of her. What? Please bring her in so I can show off this trophy wife I have? Like, that's yucky. But still, even if it's gross, why would she say no? The Midrash notices that Vashti was asked to come in bichatar malchut, with her royal crown. Well, duh, doesn't every queen go into any function wearing her royal crown? The Midrash infers that Vashti was really asked to come in wearing nothing but the crown. And suddenly, that's a very different request to come in basically naked to a party full of drunk men. Need I say more? I think it was not a safe situation for her. So yes, I like covering her body like this could be a type of dignity and self-respect. But isn't it odd that these two paintings are so similar to each other?
Yes.
Isn't it odd? I always thought that Vashti was some evil villain, that she was terrible, and that she had it coming to her. And the Midrash imagines that, like, she had, Vashti brings down a Midrash that she had her Jewish workers working on Shabbat, working naked on Shabbat, and then she would have gone in, but the Midrash imagines that, she, like, I'm so sorry, I wish I could go, but like, poof, I sprouted a tail. She became a behemoth. She became some sort of animal, right? Or like, she got shleen, some skin disease. Really? Like, the Midrash is imagining that she had it coming to her. She totally deserved it. Vashti did something wrong. And so, yeah, I mean, Achashverosh might have been yucky, but like she was not a kind person. She actually was an evil person. And so the result of her losing the queenship was just a natural consequence from that's divinely brought, that she had it coming to her. And Esther, we say, oh, Esther the hero, Esther who saved the Jewish people. Esther's like the complete opposite of Vashti. And yet, I'm struck that Edwin Long chooses to paint these women both almost identically. They have similar postures, similar body types. They both look miserable for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I guess being married to King Ahasuerus is no picnic either. I mean, he is a crazy person, so, but this is my question. Why is it that he chooses to paint them so similarly? If I was taught they were so different, what makes them similar? And so what I would like to suggest in this class is that Esther and Vashti have a whole lot in common. And I would actually say that Vashti holds a very important point and function in how Esther tells her story. Think of it this way. Megillat Esther has an unusually long exposition. An exposition means the beginning of the story. I could have had a story that would have been easily understood had it just begun with, there was a vacancy in the queenship. For whatever reason, the former queen had to go, death, divorce, what have you. There was a vacancy, who cares what it was? And then, okay, Esther went to this beauty pageant that wasn't the beauty pageant, and then she was coronated queen, and then great, she's queen. And now that she's queen, and now we get to the central tension of the narrative that Esther is able to like help save the Jewish people from this evil tyrant Haman. Why do I need all this stuff that goes on for 45 psukim? Ahasuerus had one party, then he had another party, and then he invited Vashti, and Vashti said no. Oh my gosh, what, I can't believe she said no, and then sending an edict, and then let's get rid of her, and then this like beauty pageant, and then Bigtan and Teresh tried to assassinate Ahasuerus. It's very strange. Usually the Tanakh is more or less sparse. I know this is Ketuvim, but like Tanakh is usually fairly sparse. And what's the point in bothering with this whole Vashti story out at all? Usually an exposition has to be very short. You can get to the rising action, right? So what I would like to suggest is that Esther chooses to include Vashti as a way of saying thank you to her. I noticed that when Memucan suggests to Achashverosh that he should depose Vashti, the language Memucan uses is umalchutah yitain hamelech lirutah hatova mimena, that the king shall give her queendom to her comrade who is more worthy of she. A comrade, or the word re'ut, a re'ah is a friend. Like, re'im ahuvim, like that the couple should be loving partners, right? And so listen, did Memucan say these words exactly? Probably not. I would imagine that Esther, and when Esther and Mordechai were writing Megillat Esther, they took their literary freedom in shaping what they remember Memucan to have said, or imagining what Memucan had said. What I would like to suggest in this class is that Esther includes Vashti in her story because the two of them are actually friends in a certain way. Two of them have a lot more in common than one might have otherwise expected. And so I want to like explore here what exactly makes them similar. And part of that is really getting to why Ahasuerus needs to get rid of Vashti, why Vashti was gotten rid of to begin with. So, but before I do that, I want to pause for questions. I want to pause for comments. Okay. Cool. Okay, so in that case, I'll carry on. And I want to show us a midrash from Masachet Megillat 12b. I'll say it in English. And the king was very angry, like sof hamelech me'od, v'chamato ba'arabo, that the king was very, very mad when Vashti said no. So the Gemara asks, Almai Zalakhe, like why was Achashverosh so angry? So Amarava, Rava says she sent back an answer, a stable boy of my father, right? Bar Ahuraya Da'aba, like you were just a stable boy of my father, like to Belshazzar. And my father drank wine as much as the biggest drinker of 1,000, and he didn't get drunk. And that man, you, has become deranged with his wine, right? But the Hahu Gavra, Ashtate, the Hamre, and the you, Achashverosh, you're like you were nothing. You were a stable boy. You never really truly became actual royalty. And immediately, like Sof Hamelech Ba'od, V'chamato Barabo, Miyad, immediately, Achashverosh got ticked off. So what is the Gemara saying of why Achashverosh became so mad? What made him so angry? So clearly, in this midrash, they imagine that Achashverosh and Vashti had a very tenuous marriage, where they were like rivals, and she was like undermining his very power and authority, and making him feel small. That's not. It's dysfunctional. And yeah, of course he was going to get angry after she's digging at him. But I do think there's something. But that's the midrash. I'm curious from the Pshat perspective, though, what was going on. What I would like to suggest is that Vashti in the Pshat ultimately does not do anything wrong. She was given an inappropriate suggestion from a person who was very, very drunk, surrounded by people who were very, very drunk. And if I were in Vashti's shoes, would I have acted any differently? Probably not. Like, I don't know if I would have done anything different. So is Vashti really at fault? She's in a lose-lose situation. She goes into the party, she might die. She says no to the king, she might die. And the Pshat. But isn't that interesting? Because who else in the Megillah does nothing wrong and yet has her life at risk? Who else? Who else is completely innocent? But then
Esther.
Esther did nothing wrong. Nothing. What happened? I mean, Haman makes up a stupid rule that after he had risen to the second in command to King Achashverosh, Haman makes up a rule and says that everyone outside the palace gate needs to bow down to Haman. And Mordechai hears that and he asks himself, really? I don't believe it. I don't actually believe that Haman actually has permission from the king for people to bow down to him, because who bows down to who do people bow down to other than the Kadosh Baruch Hu? They bow down to kings, right? Yosef's brothers bow down to Yosef, right? Like we do have like precedent in Tanakh of people bow down to people, right? But it's usually to kings. And Haman is making this rule so people bow down to him. And Mordechai thinks to himself, this doesn't sound right. Mordechai ultimately is loyal to Achashverosh and refuses to bow down to Haman. And that gets Haman really mad. And then Haman is also v'chamato ba'arabo. He also gets heated and angry. So what precedent do we have in the Megillah of people getting angry and wanting to kill? Well, Haman was just looking back at Achashverosh. Achashverosh also got angry and then wanted to get rid of Vashti. So Haman, he got angry and said, first he wanted to get rid of Mordechai, but then he decides to get rid of Mordechai's whole people. Did Mordechai do anything wrong? Mordechai's innocent. What about the Jewish people? They're actually innocent too. The Jewish people didn't do anything wrong. But what's absurd about Shushan is that this is a place where this insanity becomes legal. Just because something's law doesn't make it moral at all. Slavery was legal. The Nazi Germany was democratically elected and legal. Doesn't, just because it's law doesn't make it legal. And what's absurd is that Haman twists his power as second in command and makes this outlandish claim saying, you know, there's one nation, they're everywhere. And then and their belief system is different than all other people. And he makes this claim that this entire Jewish people doesn't follow the rules of the king. Is that true? No, we're only told about Mordechai, but even Mordechai, did Mordechai do anything wrong? No. And yet, Esther is in actually Vashti's shoes. Because what's Esther supposed to do? Esther thinks to herself, well, Vashti didn't make it. Where did Vashti go? Did Vashti merely depose and become a concubine, or was Vashti hung? That's another share for maybe another time. But it didn't really work out so well. Or like it didn't work out so well for Vashti. What does Esther think? Esther initially tells herself, you know what? I'm a queen in the palace. No one knows I'm Jewish. I'm safe. I mean, first of all, she didn't even know there was an edict at all to begin with, because actually Mordechai had to like inform her of it. So ironically, even despite being in the palace, she didn't know what was going on. But even once she was informed of what was going on, Mordechai asks her, please do something. She says, I really wish I could, but I can't. Everybody knows. Like, everybody knows. Like, if you go into the king's palace without being invited and announced, you could die. It's only if the king puts a scepter on me. Vashti disobeyed and she died. And if I disobey, I could die too. So better that I stay alive and stay safe in the palace and not risk it. But Mordechai has to tell her, no, Esther, if you are in the palace by yourself as the only sole Jew, you'll be physically alive, but spiritually, you'll have lost something. That's why he tells her, don't imagine in your heart that you somehow are safer than all the other Jews in the kingdom just because you're in the palace. No. Because he tells her, actually, Esther, I'm worried about you. Esther, if you're silent now, I'm worried about you and losing your father's house. Esther, you're an orphan. What about your father's house? And who knows if it was for a time as this that you became queen. And so what Esther realizes is that Esther has to actually save herself by recreating the scenario that got rid of Vashti, but instead, Esther realizes her best shot at saving herself and the Jewish people is going to be getting rid of Haman. Because even though Haman made this rule and it was on the books, we have a better shot at getting the Jewish people to safety. If Hitler's dead, like there still might be neo-Nazis, but at least like Nazi Germany itself will crumble, right? So even if Haman's rules will be on the books, better to get rid of Haman. So what happened when Vashti left, and how can Esther frame Haman like Vashti? That's the kind of masterminding. You have to read Megillat Esther like it's a spy book, or like right? Because it's like these like clever masterminding, right? And so what Esther does brilliantly is she actually doesn't fully take Mordechai's advice. Mordechai thought that if Esther just goes into Achashverosh's palace and she just says, if you just ask for the safety of your people, then Achashverosh just said yes. Esther was clever to realize that actually no, merely saying, hi, surprise, I'm Jewish, please save me and my people, that would not be enough. And so what Esther does is she actually number one has to be mastermind the scenario like Ahasuerus. Just like Ahasuerus marionetted a situation to like mask the situation to get rid of Vashti, Esther needs to marionette the situation to get rid of Haman. Because think about it. Ahasuerus, the whole point of the party was to get rid of Vashti. That's what he needed to happen. So he makes a request of her that she can't really do. And I'm like, okay, she defied the king, and then leave it up to the officers to realize that she should get deposed. So Esther has to get rid of the number 2 advisor. Yeah, the whole point of all this was to get rid of Haman. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that Ahasuerus got rid of Vashti after 2 drinking parties. There was the first party for 6 months, 180 days, and that was for all the officers. And then the last 7 days, it was kind of like a Shmini Atzaret. It was these like last days of 7 days, was for all the people of Shushan Habirah. So too, Esther gets Ahasuerus very drunk. And she has not 1 parties, but 2 parties, back-to-back parties. There was an actual function to the second party. And the whole thing is that what's brilliant is that Haman actually didn't do anything wrong. Haman is like in some ways a kind of a victim here. He had it legal on the books that the Jewish people could be killed. But what Esther does is she creates a scenario where she comes into the king unannounced, and she only asks for a party, and Ahasuerus is like, that's weird. She risked her life to only ask for a party. And then at the party number 1, Ahasuerus is like, what do you really want? And she says, I want another party. And Ahasuerus is willing to play along. In between party number 1 and party number 2, that's when Haman reveals to Ahasuerus that what he really wants is to be king himself. Haman says like, oh, if the king were to say thank you to me, then the king would like walk me around town with like the king's crown and like because that's what Haman really wants. He wants to be king. So then by the time we reach party number 2, Ahasuerus wants to really now know what's going on. But at this point now, Ahasuerus doesn't like Haman either. So what's happened then is that Esther then reveals herself and frames Haman. And then this framing actually works because it led to the loss of Haman's life, right? Do you see that? Like Haman was framed for a crime he never really did. Vashti was also framed for a crime that wasn't really fair. Right? Do you see that? It's like very clever, right? What's amazing though is that Vashti was disobedient by refusing to go, whereas Esther was disobedient by going to the king. And so in a kind of amazing way, Esther becomes Vashti because Esther becomes the disobedient queen, right? Right? Like Esther knew that like by disobeying, she was also risking her life. That's why Esther says, "V'chasher avadati avadati." I might die. La'abed in modern Hebrew also means to die by suicide, right? She knows that she might be martyred, but she realized this is actually worthwhile. And so it's not interesting? And so what's really cool is that in both scenarios, it was actually an advisor around who made the final suggestion to kill. That it was in Vashti, it was Memuchan who says, let's get rid of Vashti. And then you may remember when Esther reveals her that she's Jewish, it was Harvona who says, oh, actually, Haman made this gallows that was meant for Mordechai. Why don't we kill Haman on it? That would be funny. So it was, and that's why like at the end of reading Megillat Esther, yeah. Harvona, Zachor Lato. It's Memuchan and Harvona then are the parallel, right? It was a suggestion from an advisor. So to recap, the pattern that happens in Megillat Esther is that you have someone who feels angry, either justified or not, who then deals with their anger by trying to kill someone, regardless of whether that person is really justified in getting killed. And so that pattern began with Achashverosh getting angry at Vashti, and then Memuchan did the dirty work of, let's get rid of Vashti. The same thing happens then with Bigtan and Teresh. Katsaf, Bigtan, Teresh, the same word. Bigtan and Teresh got angry at Achashverosh. They want to get rid of Achashverosh by hanging. Then they become the one who are hanged. Haman gets angry that Mordechai doesn't bow. Haman wants to get rid of Mordechai, but then it's Haman who's then hung. So then what Esther realizes is that this is the pattern. You need to get the king angry to get rid of Haman. So she creates masterfully this scenario where someone who actually didn't do anything wrong gets framed, and she's able to incite the king's anger. And so actually Perek Zayin ends with V'chamat hamelech shachacha. Now that Haman has been hung, the king's anger subsided, right? It was forgotten, right? So it's the same pattern. Esther then gets the king angry at Haman for threatening the queen's life. Then the king feels better once Haman is hung. That's the pattern. The anger, deal with death. Remember, Shushan is kind of a crazy person, right? So I think there's a deep lesson to derive from this, and then I'll close for questions. The deep lesson, I think, is this. Vashti was a failed queen. She's not successful in saving herself. And that's sad. And I know it's like funny because Memuchan like imagines like, oh my God, because Vashti said no, like lo al hamelech levado avid Vashti hamalkatz. Like, you know, when Vashti said no, like she didn't say no just to the king. It's like she actually said no to all the officers and all the kingdoms and all the men in the entire kingdom, because the word's going to get out that Vashti said no, and then all these women in the kingdom, all these women are going to be empowered to have this like feminist uprising and like follow in Vashti's footsteps. You know, maybe Vashti could have actually caused that kind of revolution to like overthrow all the men in the kingdom. I don't know. That's what Memuchan is afraid of. So maybe Vashti could have made Memuchan's worst fear come true. I don't know. But I think ultimately she didn't have that power. She didn't have that creativity. She didn't realize she had that power. And she ultimately failed. And and I think in the pshat, there's a part of me that feels sad that a victim, she was me too, you know, she was a victim of this. And so Esther chooses to include Vashti in her story as a way to say thank you. Had it not been for Vashti, Esther would not have known what to do to save the Jewish people. And so I think this is really true about thanking your failed leadership. And when you get to where you're going, turn around and help her too. For there was a time not long ago when she was you, right? There's something to derive from our failed leadership. Our failed leadership teaches us something, right? Because we learn from mistakes. Ideally, we learn from our own mistakes. But if you can't learn from your own mistakes, you learn from someone else's mistake. So my bracha for you is to either inside or to actually verbalize a thank you to someone in your life who taught you something about what not to do. Sometimes we learn from that. And in this case, Esther was able to save the whole Jewish people in the process. Go. So I'm going to now pause I'm done with my presentation piece, but I'd love to hear thoughts, feelings, reactions, critique, challenge, rebuttals. Please, Tammy.
I mean, I thought that was a very interesting way to present. It never occurred to me, you know, why was Vashti mentioned in the Megillah? It could have just been like the previous queen was banished and then, but it gives you food for thought that sometimes people who we think and appear to us as maybe or sold to us as being evil really aren't so bad, that there might be an underlying reason why they might be doing what they're doing that we may not understand until we too might be in their shoes. If you understood my accent.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I think this is listen, the Midrash is very critical of her, but I think the Pshat is very, I think the Pshat, I think a fair Pshat reading is that she gets the short end of the stick. I mean, honestly, what did she do wrong? She lives in a society where saying no to the king costs you your queenship. That seems unfair.
I mean, I thought that was a beautiful presentation. Thank you. And I think even your framing of it as Esther's story and Esther writing the story just re-empowers her by looking at it through that frame of what she wanted to include and how she wanted to tell her story. I tend to look at it through the lens of Midrash, and I think that's a really beautiful thing that you took it back to Pshat and back to text, and that it's her book. So yeah, I love
The only Megillah, or the only work of Tanakh that I'm aware of that was authored by women. In this, we have 7 Neviot, but we don't necessarily have 7. But we don't. But my impression, my understanding is that the other books of Tanakh are written by men. Albeit, I'll do say an asterisk that within Perek Tet of Megillat Esther, there's no less than 3 times that there's a mention of a Sefer and a Megillah being written, and so it's actually not so obvious which version went into the annals of the king, which version went to the people of Shushan and Parasu Madai, and which version do we read? But a fair reading is that Batich Tov Esther Bat Abichail, that when what Esther wrote is the version that we have.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful presentation. Thank you. I think what's so interesting also is going back to that first image that you shared about Vashti and Esther. In that image, Esther looked very passive, that things are being done to her, and that she kind of lets things go and let whatever happens. And in the story, it has this grand finale where like she takes action, but it feels like that's almost a departure from the character that we've come to recognize throughout the story, but showing how she wasn't passive, that she was very actively learning. And you showed 7 different ways in which she took exactly the lead of Vashti, and she did this very meticulously. It's a different Esther. It's an Esther that actually is very much active in the story in a way that I hadn't read when I think about the story. So thank you.
It's a legitimate question to ask why it's called Megillat Esther. Why is it not Megillat Mordechai? Right? Like sometimes the name of a Megillah actually, our book says a lot about who the book is about. And I'm not talking about the name of the parsha, because the name of the parsha is always the first 2 or 3 words. So like, why is this parsha called Chaye Sarah if it's about her death? Like, it just happens to be the first 2 words, right? Or like, why is this parsha called Parsha Balak? Isn't he an evil person? No, it's like, but when it comes to a book like Megillat Esther or like Megillat Ruth, sometimes these title questions really matter. Like, why is it not called Megillat Naomi? Like, who's the protagonist who's actually moving the narrative forward, right? For that matter, you could actually ask why is this not called Megillat Achashverosh, actually. The word Hamelech appears no less than 300 times in Megillat Esther. 300, it's not a Milah Mancha or what? I mean, that's a word that repeats again. It's like hitting you with a sledgehammer, Hamelech, Hamelech, Hamelech. And so it's like Hamelech Achashverosh, meaning King Achashverosh, and then there's also like Hamelech in the Zohar refers to like the king above, the Dilamala Dilatata. But in all seriousness, when it comes to Esther, though, up until Perek Daled, everything was passive. Vatilakach, the grammar matters, and she was taken, right? Like she's always presented in the passive, and the passive, and the passive. She doesn't even necessarily want to be queen. I mean, hello, who wants to be married to a crazy person? Actually, I just did this with my students today at Manhattan Day School, where we were looking at the beginning of Perek Bet, and the trigger for today's class was if you had to imagine why your parents fell in love with each other and what they see in each other, what do you imagine? What do you like? And they said, my parents are funny with each other, they trust each other, they love each other, like, right? Like, good. They see the good in their parents. And then I said, okay, so Achashverosh, things didn't go so well with wife number one. So now he gets to try again with wife number two. What do you think Achashverosh should look for in his next wife? And they were like, the things we saw in our parents. I was like, right, because that's healthy, right? But then it's like, but what actually does Achashverosh look for in a second wife? Well, these officers by Achashverosh had searched out for Na'arot Betulot Tovot Mareh, young women who hadn't been married before and who are pretty. And they're like, oh, Achashverosh is really shallow. It's like, yes, very shallow. Like he's not worth a cup of coffee. If he asks you out on a date, say no. Like, right? Like this is all to say that if you are taken to the harem, then if you're like stuck, like, okay, so option number one, I'm stuck in the harem forever. Or option number two, I'm like, if I'm stuck, the other option would then be, okay, I guess I got to be married to the crazy person. Guess I got to choose which one is which. Letty, hello. I'm only realizing this is not usually my usual Zoom room. So I heard a beep beep. I didn't realize it was someone trying to get into the Zoom room. I feel bad. Hello, Letty. Hi. Were you trying to get into the Zoom room before?
I was driving to the airport to log in again. I'm just hearing it.
Oh, okay. No, okay. So maybe it was someone else then. Okay, but welcome. We're just about to wrap up. Anyway, yes, this is all to say that Esther was passive, but the moment when she shifts to earn her title, truly his title, is when Mordechai asks her, and who knows? For it is this time at this that you've arrived at royalty. I think for our whole lives, we can ask ourselves, like, what's my purpose? How am I supposed to make my mark? What's my tafkid? What's my tafkid? Like, I'm on earth in this purpose. Like, Hashem wanted it that I am with you right now, looking at my computer screen at these boxes, and behind them are actual neshamas. Hashem wanted it that I'm teaching you Torah right now, and Hashem wanted it that you would have these thoughts of Torah that would be al that would be on your heart. Why? But this is like our life question. What's my purpose? Like, why am I here in this very moment specifically, but also more broadly, right? So, but I think for Mordechai, he's like wondering, maybe this is your tafkid. Like, maybe this is what you have to do. And so she really harnesses it. And the way she harnesses it is very sly and very sneaky, very relational, very like mastermindy, like inception-y. Like it's very clever. It's like a spy movie.
I'm reminded of, first of all, lovely to hear your voice and your shiur. I'm reminded of the three different types of people who learn from learning about mistakes. The easiest way to the hardest way, the easiest way, but the hardest way to learn, I guess, is from your own mistakes. The easiest way is to learn from other people's mistakes. So that's the second type of people. And then the third type of people are those who don't learn at all. So Esther was obviously very smart, and she was able to learn from other people's mistakes and not have to make her own mistakes to save the Jewish people. So that's one takeaway.
One of my dear teachers, Mrs. Alter, taught me. She said, after Yom Kippur, she came over to me and she said, Shalhevet, I had an insight on Yom Kippur. And she said, I realized that what I should daven for is that when I'm making a mistake, Hashem should help me realize immediately and on my own that I'm making the mistake. Because she said it shouldn't be that someone else has to tell me I've made a mistake. It's that I figured out myself that I made the mistake. I thought that was very powerful. She's like my puppy. She's someone like near and dear to my heart. Yeah. Okay, well, I wish you all a Chag Purim Sameach. If I don't see you before the Stanton folks, Dvir and I are going to be in, we're going to be in Stanton. It's going to be with lots of fun with Megillah readings, and we're going to have like a little carnival, and we're thinking about face painting Haman and Haman bowling balls, because you get to knock down Haman. Yeah. Okay, but like we've had like all sorts of glorious ideas. So this is amazing. This is extraordinary. Shechianu. We on the Zoom, we have people from Montreal, New York City, San Diego, Boca, Miami, Boston. I mean, this is really, of course, Lower East Side, all over. So it's really amazing to see all of you. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules, and even in an airport, squeezing in Torah learning. Unbelievable. Amazing, amazing. That's truly, truly uvelachtecha baderech. They say in Shema today, like you should learn Torah all over, everywhere. We have a little bit of Torah on our doorposts. We have a little bit, but even when you're so excited to learn Torah, even on your way. So really, Letty, very impressed. I'm at my home, I'm back home from work after, but like, wow, even on the airport, you're learning Torah. Extraordinary. Wishing you all a
Thank you. It was really good. Thank you.
Sending lots of love. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
Right.
you. Bye.
Beautiful.